Danielle, many people, especially in the South, go to the Gulf Coast for vacations, food, beaches, sun, and fun, or just a good getaway. The younger crowd and some up in age actually start thinking about moving to the coast. So, as an angler and a guide, and also a normal person, what are the three best things you can tell us about living at the coast, and what else is fun about living there?
Yeah, so Apalachicola, the Forgotten Coast, the surrounding towns, there's a lot to offer with that. We have a very picturesque, iconic downtown, historic downtown. It has everything you could possibly want, the shops, the restaurants, the bars. There's always a festival going on of some sort. So we just had our Apalachicola Seafood Festival. We have an oyster cook-off. We have a Barktober, Barkus parade, which is like a dog Mardi Gras parade. There's always something to do downtown, which is one of the great parts about living here. I think the other thing I would say is all the untouched nature. So, and not just talking about fishing, right? There are so many places to just get outside and explore and not see another person the entire day. So you can go up into the Apalachicola River system, go birding, of course fishing, but then there's last time I was up there, we saw manatees. There are these little communities of houseboats up the river. I mean, there's just so much to explore. And it's a pretty incredible ecosystem there with the Apalachicola River system. And then, when you were down, we went out to Little St. George or
Yep.
Little St. George Island,
Yep.
where we had lunch that day. That's a great place. There's primitive campsites, and a lot of people go out there and go shelling on the Gulf side. We have our forests. So we have Apalachicola National Forest and Tripletail State Forest where people go hiking, camping, hunting. There's just so much access to public land and water. And that's one of the reasons I got drawn to the area for sure. But I think the main reason that I stay here is the community. We have, I think there's less than 3,000 people in Appalach and the surrounding area. I don't know the exact number, but you can't go to the Piggly Wiggly without bumping into 10 people you know. We just had the election, and it was so nice to know the people that were on the ballot, personally. You know who you're voting for. You've had dinner with them, or you've bumped into them around town. I think today I went to the library to print my notes for this, and I met a local oyster fisherman or farmer, oyster farmer, I guess. And, she's just encouraging me about the podcast. And
Oh,
it's a really good, sweet community. So I think that's what is the biggest selling point.
nice, nice. So the Piggly Wiggly, do they still do the smoke, the barbecue and stuff out front, or is it done? 'Cause they,
I haven't seen that going in a long time.
yeah, yeah. I used to when we used to go down there early, maybe 10 years ago, probably. It's probably the last time I noticed it, and we were down there at a time where they could. Man, that's some good barbecue. It was, I mean, outstanding. And
Yeah.
another thing about Appalachia is the cemetery there is really, for a cemetery, it's really neat. It's like it. There's some old stuff in there and old stories in there. So
Oh, absolutely. They used to, a few Halloweens ago, they do a tour of the cemetery. And I found out that Apalachicola was at one point one of the biggest ports in the South. So
yep,
it was popping. Not the case so much anymore, but that was really interesting to see that that was so important to the South, at that time.
yeah. So they did. Was it cotton and something else were the main things that were down there at that time when they had those? And there's the ice, the guy that invented refrigeration, I guess, or ice or something like that. That little museum down there is it's like a 1 room, 2 room museum. We went in one time. Yeah, my daughter was like, I don't know what are we doing in here? And I said, this is where ice, really started.
Well, and that led to the air conditioning, right? Because
Yeah,
they took the ice and then they blew a fan over it. So,
yeah,
some big things happened around here.
yeah, 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 so and everybody that listens to this podcast knows I love that whole area down there. The whole Forgotten Coast is, to me, one of the best places ever. So let's go ahead and kick this show off from high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly. This is the Southeastern Fly podcast. Thanks for joining us on this episode. Feel free to share this. I encourage you to share this with your friends and your fishing partners. Hit the like and click the follow buttons. You can also listen to this podcast or watch it on YouTube. So we're doing that, and you've known that if you've listened to that. So who am I? I'm going to start with that just to get this out of the way. My name is David Perry. I own Southeastern Fly. We're a guide service in Middle Tennessee. We basically are a trout guide service, but we also do muskie starting here shortly and running through spring. We do smallmouth trips starting in spring and then trout most of the rest of the year. Try to take a month or so off, starting around December-ish, running through January before the shad kill kicks on. So you can find us at southeasternfly.com. And if you have any questions, just let me know. I got people that text and email and call, and I don't mind answering any of the questions that I can or pointing you in the right direction to get you some answers to your questions. So, who is our guest on this Tripletail and other salty fish on the fly episode? She's passionate about getting people on the fish. She wants her clients to enjoy the all around experience of the coast, which you got a little touch of there. She fixes an awesome lunch. She's known for canned Gatorades, for sure, and she's a pleasure to share the boat with. You can find her at ladyguideflyfishing.com, all the way from Appalachia. Please welcome to the podcast the owner and head guide of Lady Guide Fly Fishing, Danielle Davidson. Danielle, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
Gosh, when were you down? That was early spring, June, right as we were getting into summer.
Yeah. It was warm, but it wasn't terrible. It was actually really nice till the day we came home. Then it was like 1,000,000 degrees. So we left the hotness down there. The heat of the summer came on just about the time we left. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a while, but
yeah.
Somewhere up here, I've got.
I can
see
it.
See it right? It's part of it. There it was. So this is a sticker, a decal, because you go down smooth. Lady Guide Fly Fishing. This is the first place that I think I've ever had a canned Gatorade. Was on the water with Danielle, and it was so good because it had been in ice, like in ice water, and it's a can. I'm not going to say where you get them because I don't know if you want to let that out or not, but
yeah, you might deplete my source.
I know I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. But I haven't ordered any, but I'm going to next summer and keep them for special occasions. They are really good. I think that day we were out, it probably got up to 90, which people up north are freaking out about, but 90 is not all that hot for us. So
no, they're that's one of the little treats to have on the boat, and with just how hot it gets down here, it's just sometimes you need something to cool off a little bit. And that kind of all started with like trying not to have single-use plastic on the boat. So I tried to find, it's a little more expensive, but just having an alternative that wasn't like a plastic bottle, because we already have so much of that in like our waterways. It was like, okay, let's look for an alternative here. And that's what we came up with. And it's definitely stuck. People are expecting it now. So hopefully they keep making them, because I think I'll have some upset clients if we got rid of the canned Gatorade.
Yeah, there may be a uprising on Gatorade's hands. But when we went out and fished, you were putting us in front of a lot of different kinds of fish. We did some redfish, we did some sheep's head, we were looking for the Tripletail just to see if we could get some of them. But you're becoming known for guiding and enjoying fishing for Tripletail. That's kind of been a lot of folks start associating folks with that. And I know you're more than that, don't get me wrong, but we wanted to talk about this today. Can you tell us some of the secrets to catching these fish on the fly?
Yeah. So, I think the reason I'm becoming known for guiding for Tripletail is because I am, like, as you mentioned, a newer guide. This is my first year. In October, it's been a year. So it's my first full year. I'm getting a lot, I'm getting all sorts of clients, but I'm also getting a lot of the beginning fly anglers, people that are just getting into the sport. And Tripletail is such a great species to introduce somebody to the sport of saltwater fly fishing. And that's because they're stationary, they're on structure, they're not moving around on you. They're not like a redfish where you have to make a 50, 60-foot cast to not spook the fish. You're making maybe a 20, 30-foot cast, and I can help you a lot with the boat, the way we position the boat. So it's a really good species for fly fishing and for people that are just getting into fly fishing. That's why I really like it. I think, that's kind of why it's become popular here. I know you were you wanting some information on a setup, if somebody was trying to come down and fish for Tripletail. I think an 8-weight rod is definitely my go-to for Tripletail fishing. And honestly, if somebody asked me hey, you have to have one fly rod and pick it, and that's the one you get for the rest of your life, it's probably going to be an 8-weight for me. I use that for just about everything. And then in regards to line, I would recommend a floating line, right? Because these fish are going to be up in the water column and sometimes just right on top of the surface. And so a floating line is best for that. You would use a leader, like a tapered leader, just like any other kind of fly fishing. And my go-to is usually a 16-pound tapered leader. And then you put a little 20-pound bite tippet on. And the reason for that is because they have really sharp gill plates. And also they're around a bunch of structure, right? So that 20-pound bite tippet just is a little more forgiving for that. And then what else do you want to know? The flies, I guess. That's the big part.
We probably better talk about the flies. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to want to know that.
Take note of that. I've tried out all sorts, but I think I'm down to 3 that I really like. I have a good friend named AJ Rosenbaum who ties me flies in bulk, right? So I order them from him, every 6 months or so and fill the box up. But he ties me this really nice shrimp pattern. And I don't know if you're gonna see these in the podcast or not.
Oh yeah, I can see them on the
Oh, here we
right
go.
there.
So it's very shrimpy, right? And he ties me 2 different types. So a tan and a chartreuse for when the water is really dirty, but they have lots of silly legs, right? So there's a lot of movement going on here. And I think I asked him about this. I think he said the original pattern came from 239 flies. And I think they call it the leg-tastic critter. So that's my number 1. That's my go-to for Tripletail, just with a very light weight. And there's just so much movement there with that fly. So that's been really successful.
Those are pretty slow sinking, aren't they? They're not rocked to the bottom. They kind of just float to the bottom.
Yeah, that was one of the features that we've, with AJ, we've made some adjustments over the orders and stuff, and we ultimately decided on the extra small dumbbell eyes, and that's been perfect. Really good sink ratio. It's not sinking too fast where the fish misses it. It kind of just stays in a good spot. So I highly recommend extra small weight on that.
So plenty of time for the fish to adjust themselves and get a good look at it, and they're not having to chase it. They're able to intercept if they need to.
Yeah. So that's my go-to. That's number 1.
Nice. What so I would be remiss if I didn't ask what knot you use to tie that fly to the shock tippet.
I just do a loop knot. So
just a loop knot. Okay.
Yeah, just a loop knot, and then your traditional, if I'm in a rush, I'll do a traditional clinch knot, but I try to do the loop knot so it has a little bit more movement. And that's pretty much what I do for most of my flies, unless we're tarpon fishing.
Speaking of loops, do you trust the loop on the end of a fly line, or do you cut it off?
I do. I haven't had any issues. Working at the fly shop down in the Keys, there's still a lot of people that like to cut that off and do a knot, and but I've not had a single issue, and so it's been fine with me. I think there's been a lot of advancements in technology, and I think it can be trusted a little more than maybe 10, 20 years ago.
Oh, definitely more
What
than that.
about you?
Yes. But I flip flop back and forth. So right now I am on some of the rods, the trout rods, the smaller trout, the 6 weights.
Yep.
I'm on a loop on some of them, and some of them I'm on a knot. But I just put together a couple of 8 weights, like you were talking about, and snipped them off. I was like, I
Did you?
can't.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just was like, I can't deal with this. I think it's because I had a guy that came with a brand new, maybe he'd been out a couple of times, and it had a loop on his fly line, expensive fly line too. Like I've never bought anything this expensive. And I said, hey, you got a little cut in the loop here. He said, no, huh? It's brand new. And I was like, no, really, it's a cut in the loop. And he said, this is, I don't remember, $140 fly, something like that for freshwater. That to me is quite a bit of money. And I think that flashed back in my head whenever I was putting these two rods together. So yeah, now I'm kind of swaying back to I'm just going to cut them off and be done with it, all because of that one thing. I mean, really
Yeah.
triggered me to do that. But speaking of 8 weights, so you said yours would be an 8 weight,
Yeah.
your choice. I got a couple of 10-foot 8 weights. Have you done a 10-foot rod yet?
I've not. I've not. I've all mine are the 9 foot rods. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for beginning folks, I think maybe the 9 foot's a little better, but you can hum it with a 10-foot 8 weight. I mean, it will, especially those light flies like you're throwing. We were throwing a little bigger streamers the other day with them. But yeah, those little light flies, man, you can get some distance without hardly any. I mean, it's all forearm basically. You don't have to raise anything. They just zip it out there. So
So are those like custom made rods, or is there a brand that's making those?
no, those are Orvis. Yeah,
Orvis,
these
okay.
are Orvis, and not everybody has them, but a lot of folks have them. I can't remember. Do you use TFO? Is that what you were using? What did you have? I can't
So
remember.
right now I'm doing Thomas and Thomas and
Yeah,
TFO. So
yeah,
I have a
yeah. That's right.
mixture of both. Um, and yeah, all 9 foot, and they've been doing good.
Yeah, yeah. And I've got six weights or 9 foot, but yeah, the 10 foot really put some extra leverage in there for us.
You'll have to bring that down next time you're down here.
I
I'd like
will.
to
I'll
give that
bring
a
it.
try.
Yeah, yeah. I got a couple of them.
Well, I got
Yeah,
2 more flies if you want to
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
triple tail if you want to see them.
Yes, yes,
So
yes, yes. I do.
if the shrimp pattern doesn't work, I have the Flexo Crab.
Uh huh.
So just your Flexo tubing crab, very small. That's usually my go-to like second attempt because if you're throwing at a fish and you're putting the fly in front of them and they're not reacting, they're not eating, it's time to change the fly. And so that's when I'll throw this guy on and have had lots of success with that. But just this year I started with a new fly and
Mm.
I actually had it out for sheep's head. So it was new for me. I was using it for sheep's head and I just happened to have it on the rod
Oh
and it's
wow.
really kind of, I don't know if you can
Yeah,
see it,
yeah. I see it.
but it's kind of like a strong arm, like crab pattern. It's from Space Coast Flies and it's just bright orange. I think they really like that pop of color and I think we've caught at least 10 fish on this fly this season. So
Oh, nice.
I've just had it on the rod and tossed it in and they gulp it right up. So
Is that
the
is that
only,
a curved hook? Almost looks curved.
no, just,
Oh, it's fatter
mhm,
on the bottom. Okay, I got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's what's going on.
And then I just placed an order for a dozen of these just to have them ready for next year, but I asked for a weed guard.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's a good
when
idea.
you're fishing all that structure, having that weed guard is key.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so when we were out, we were going and hitting little patches of stuff and some floating stuff. I don't remember what all it was, but getting close was a big deal. The bay was a little bit off color, I think, in the deeper
Hmm.
waters. And there were a couple places where you could see the line, the demarcation of, yep, this is dirt and this is a little clearer. So yeah, so
Yeah.
you had to get pretty close and get into weeds and stuff like that. So that's a great idea. Those three flies look good, especially that last one. That one's a little different
Yeah.
than what I would
Yeah.
think it would throw down there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how that orange was going to be like taken, but they seem to really like it, especially with that dirty colored water that you were just talking about. And that's really been an issue all year. I mean, in the spring and early summer, we had dredging going on that was stirring things up. And then, just recently with all the storms and the water that we had before the storms, it's just been hard to find clean, clear water. So we're kind of just making do with what we got.
Are y'all getting any of the dirt from the hurricane that went up into Georgia, up in North Carolina? Is that still coming down? I know y'all got part of that on the front end, but are you getting any of the water that came down through the river system to the
You,
Appalachia?
you know, for a few weeks, which for a few weeks after the storms, definitely getting runoff and stuff coming down the Apalachicola River. And so it's just now starting to clean up, thankfully. But yeah, we've been dealing with some dirty water for a bit.
Yeah, yeah, I thought you had. I think when we started talking about this I think it was about a month ago or so, and that was just had gone through, or it was fixing to come through. One of the two. There were two events right there together anyway. And
Yeah.
what did the triple tail? Did they do anything different, or do they still hit the same places?
So there is definitely like, there I'm still figuring them out, right? And I think a lot of people are still figuring out them out, but salinity is a big thing for them. So when you have all that rainwater and stuff, they kind of like I kind of noticed them like disperse a little bit for a while, but past couple of weeks they're definitely have been back in the area. We're getting towards the end of the season right now, October, November, and then one year my dad and I had like a little bet. We're like, oh, we're gonna catch them all year long, right? And so we did, October, November, December, we were feeling really good. We got one in January, and then
Oh,
February it was like we
oh,
could not catch one in February. So, they hang around longer than a lot of people expect, like not in the same numbers or anything like that. But we're definitely coming towards the end of our season here. So
I'm going to tell the folks listening that Danielle is very modest about how much she knows. Like she knows a lot, trust me, because I spent a day with her listening to all the things that stuff would roll off her tongue and she wouldn't think about it. I'd be like, okay, she's been studying, she's been catching, she's been studying, she's been spending time on the water. So she's perfecting her craft a whole lot more than what she's going to let on. So just so you know that, y'all, if you're listening, take that to heart. But I didn't,
thank
I
you.
didn't even realize how now is the time for conservation on this particular species of fish. I've been hearing snippets about it. I talked with Kevin Burdett about it, and on episode 90, or I'm sorry, 36, not 96, on the podcast, about how they're kind of doing more things. Y'all are doing more things to try to preserve the species, where you've got folks that are taking them out, as many as they can take every day, all day. And then you and I talked this past spring, and we really kind of drilled into some of the things that are, qualities about the fish and that sort of thing. So I want to talk about that. So if you can just give us the 411 on triple tail all around, I think that we would all appreciate knowing more about them.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely like keep me on track too. If I go off topic, like bring me back to where you want me because I can kind of go off on this and go on a little tangent. But triple tail fishing, like here in this area, used to be like a very like well kept secret with locals and didn't become like super popular until it was like kind of offered as an alternative to like the heavily like targeted species such as like redfish and snapper. Like, there was a time there where those got depleted, they were overfished. And so I think triple tail was offered as an alternative. Like, here, you want a good eating fish, like this is something you can go for. My concern right now is like now that's the fish being overfished and hit hard. And so, it's gotten very popular here in our area recently, and it's just concerning. So like our regulations here in Florida is 2 fish per person. And if you think about that, like, oh, that's no big deal, right? If I go out and I keep 2 fish, like then you start thinking about it like on a bigger scale. And you're like, okay, well, I'm running a skiff that only holds 2 anglers. But what if I have a bay boat that has 6 people on it? Then you're going from keeping 4 fish to 12. in the state of Florida. And it's like, oh, that's a lot. I mean, you can keep one legal fish and feed at least 4 people a really good dinner.
Yes.
So then it's like, I feel like we're taking more than we need. And I'm also just a little concerned. Like, I'm not a scientist. This is just what I'm seeing on the water. So I'm hoping the data, like, and the scientists, like, we all get on one page here at some point, because you hear lots of stories at the boat ramp. You hear the charter boat captains that are like filling the coolers complain about not catching tripletail. You hear just the recreational anglers complaining about not being able to catch them like they used to. And you got to stop and think like, hey, that's because of us. That's because we keep taking. And I feel like some change needs to happen here in this area regarding the fish. They're super fast growing, which to me is like hopeful that, like, okay, if they are being overfished, they're going to be able to recover if we do something about it. I just feel like now's the time to do something about it. You think about the other southern states too. So like Florida actually has some pretty good regulations with 2 fish per day. You have Mississippi, Alabama, that's 3 fish per day, and then Louisiana has 5 fish per day.
Wow.
So going back to that bay boat can hold 30 fish and keep up 30 fish, which is just a lot. I don't think it's needed, but that's just where I stand. That's my opinion. I don't want to ruffle too many feathers with that statement, but
No, so if a bay boat goes out once in the morning, takes 6 people, let's just say 6. Let's use your number. You said 6, right? 6
mhm.
anglers. Can they go back out in the afternoon and get with 6 different anglers and get?
That's a question for Fish and Wildlife. I'm not sure. I mean, I know from a recreational perspective, like for when we go scalloping and stuff, like you're not allowed to go in, drop off what you caught, and go back out and get another limit. So
Okay.
that's a very interesting perspective. I guess you have new anglers on the boats,
Yeah.
so all my trips are catch and release, so we're not
Yeah.
keeping anything on my boat. But so I'm
Right.
I'm not exactly sure on the legality of that question. That would be very interesting. But yeah, I believe that they can take, you know, 2 days worth of
Yeah. So you
their
take
limit.
2 days worth of fish in a day, spread over mostly over the summer. I mean, they don't,
Yeah.
like you said, they're gone pretty much in the winter. They're not as catchable. So people aren't coming down to fish as much then. But yeah, I thought that just popped in my mind. You were talking about fast growing. What is fast growing? How big do they get? How fast?
So I really like the University of Southern Mississippi has the Gulf Coast Research Lab, and they've been studying these fish since like I think 1996 or something, a long time. And so I kind of went through their reports to like give you accurate information, but they have like a biological report on tripletail, and it kind of has like their growth rate. So like in the first 60 days, they can grow 2.2 millimeters per day. And I mean, that's fast. And
That
that
is.
like that continues. I mean, it kind of slows down a little bit between 61 and 210 days, but then they're very fast growing fish. So that's why I am hopeful that, if we do find ourselves in a bad situation, they can recover.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't know that. I guess what are you doing? What do you do to preserve them? What can we do about that? I mean, if we decide we want to do something about it, what can you do?
I think it's just like changing the culture and the mindset of like filling the cooler, killing everything you catch, putting some value on like these natural resources that they're more valuable to us alive than dead, right? Like what it does for this community, it brings all these tourists to town, it brings the anglers, the restaurant. I mean, there's just so much it does for our community that I feel like, they're worth more to us alive than dead. But and I'm not saying don't keep them because I know they're very tasty.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm just saying maybe keep what you need and not what you're allowed to keep. So you're allowed to keep a lot. Like, do you really need that much? Um, I recommend Gulf Coast Research Lab's tagging program. I mean, it can be fun, right? Catching a fish, tagging it, taking a photo, releasing it. And what's so fun about it is 3 months later, you might get a recapture report from GCRL that tells you where your fish traveled to, how much
Oh,
it grew. What else does it tell you? It tells you who caught it. So you can like see, like I just had one come back to me a couple weeks ago that my dad was actually the guy that recaught
uh,
one of the fish that we released. So it's
really?
just like it kind of like builds yeah, yeah. That was
Oh,
funny.
that's cool.
We got a good laugh out of that.
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised that he had re-released the fish. Unfortunately, it was because it would have been illegal to have kept it. but needless to say, I mean, that's like, that's a fun way to like keep fishing for them, but also, do good for the fishery and kind of help researchers learn more about the fish.
Is that where they're getting their 2.2 millimeters first 60 days
Yeah,
data
yeah.
from that?
So they used all that like tagging information for their reports. They do, they work with the state on conservation efforts and just like their management strategies and stuff like that. So, I mean, to have that many years worth of data is really important. And that's just kind of why I support it. Like, that's, priceless information right there, like to have all that in one spot. So,
Okay, so your dad recaught it. Did you get his coordinates on where he caught it?
yeah. That's actually a funny thing. It's something that I block off when if I ever repost like a recapture report, I'll just put a picture of the fish there because it
Oh yeah,
actually
yeah.
does show you like where
Oh,
it
it
was
does.
caught.
Ah.
So if you ever see my Instagram or anything, you'll just typically see a picture of the fish that like my angler caught right there over that little blue box.
Oh, that's a good
But
idea. So what you just told me is you went and stole your dad's spot right after he gave you that information, right?
yeah, to be fair, like I probably got all my spots from my dad, so we'll give him some credit right there, having fished with him my whole life.
Well, true. Yeah, it's hard not to end up in the same spot as he does, I bet. All right. Anything else that we need to hear about on the conservation front?
I think it's kind of interesting. I was like digging into it a little more, and I noticed that like the state record for Florida is 40 pounds, 40.8 pounds.
Wow.
But that you want to guess when that was caught though?
Oh, like 1940.
1998. So it's been a
Oh,
long
wow.
time since we've had a fish that big that was caught. And it's just like, it makes you wonder, is it because, they've gotten so popular that they're getting caught more frequently and not given the opportunity to get that big? But I thought that was an interesting little stat there.
That is, the 1998 is the year my daughter was born, so that's
Huh.
been a while. I still have one of the shirts from when she was born too, by the way. So I've got a
Oh,
shirt
cool.
that's old as that fish. But the one that I don't you probably don't remember this, but we were coming back into Appalach on the trip that we did down there this summer, and there was one just hovering out in the middle. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I got a
It
glimpse of
was
it.
it was pretty rough, right? Like on
Yes,
the
oh
way
yeah,
in, it had
yeah, it
gotten
was.
choppy. Yes.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was to me looked like a pretty big fish, like maybe a 10 pounder, maybe something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, probably 10 pounds. And I think that's pretty common, right? Like 5 to 10 pounds are like probably like the average size of fish we catch over here. And unless you're using live bait or fishing on the bottom, you might be able to catch some of the bigger fish that way. It seems like what I've noticed is that the bigger fish are smart, right? They stay down a little more. So it's pretty exciting when you do see one of those larger fish like on the surface, just chilling. That's always really exciting. So
Yeah, we did a 180 real quick to go back and look for
yeah,
that fish, but I think we just ran too close to it because, like I said, it was choppy. We
weren't
couldn't see.
expecting.
Wasn't like you were going to see it from more than a boat length away. So we ran right by it.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
and Danielle was on the brakes. And your boat, that boat is awesome. It's a Hell's Bay, right?
Yeah, so I'm running the Hells Bay Marathon right now, and it's great for those days like that one where
Yeah.
the bay gets choppy and you can cut across and still be comfortable. And it beats. I was running a smaller tiller skiff before, and kind of were like, oh, am I going to make it back to the boat ramp on in that boat. So I definitely like the larger skiff.
Yeah, I like one with a wheel, steering wheel. I'd rather have one of those if
Yeah.
I, and I look at skiffs all the time. Like, oh, I could get one of those and do carp and then run down to Louisiana and take it down to Appalachia. I don't have time for that. I know I don't, but I still keep looking like I think I could do this. And then reality hits, smacks me in the face, and I don't get one. So, but if I was going to get one, that's what I think I would want is one with the a steering wheel on it, so I didn't have to stand up. Maybe I'm lazy. I don't know. I just don't want to have to stand up all the time.
Yeah, I definitely don't recommend a tiller skiff for triple tail fishing though, because you're back there like having to bump it in reverse and then bump it
Oh yeah,
forward and like also have to deal, with the engine. And so like having a boat that has a steering wheel for triple tail fishing is really nice.
yeah.
Makes it a little easier.
I know one of the things that I see are tournaments for conservation and that sort of thing. And when I first started fly fishing, I said I am not going to fish competitively. I'd been doing some other things competitively, and I said I need a break from that. So I kind of shied away from that aspect of the sport. To me, that's like an individual decision, and if you want to do it, fantastic. I don't necessarily want to do it. I would love to do it once just to say I did it, but I don't think that's something for me to do. But if you do it, and I know you do it, I've got some other friends that do some as well, and I support all y'all 100%. I just said at the beginning when I started fishing, I just said to myself, I am not going to do that. I'm not going to get wrapped up because I can get wrapped up. I can get wound up tight whenever I get competitive, and nobody likes that, David. That David's no fun. But I know that you fish tournaments throughout the year, and a lot of times those tournaments support a particular conservation effort. But the other side of that is you're getting to experience different things. And I know that the competitive side gives you some advantages that you may not get to see or think of whenever you're just out there fishing. So, what are some of the things that you experience when you're fishing a tournament?
It's kind of funny because like you asked me about tournament fishing and I'm like, I'm not a tournament fisherman. Like, what's he talking about? And then I'm over here reflecting. I'm like, oh, I did the sheepy, I did the ladies red, I did the permit pachanga, and I like start listing all these tournaments. And I was like, I don't think I do them for the tournament or the competitiveness. I think I do them for the community. And if you know me, I don't stay in one place very long. And so I've lived all over, lived in Alabama, Florida, different parts of Florida. So Pensacola, Apalachicola, the Keys. And it's like you meet people along the way. And what I like about these tournaments is like not only are you supporting a good cause, but you're actually getting to see your friends in those areas and meet new people that have similar like likenesses that value the sport, value the cause. And so I think mostly I do them for like a social aspect in the community, but also it's my chance to fish. It's like when we're working we're not fishing, and so that's like some designated time for me to be on the bow and get to fish, which I really like. And I think I might not have answered your question there with that one, but
No, that's you have. So do you learn a lot? Um,
yeah.
a lot of little tick tricks and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think, you get to explore new areas, you fish with new people, you see how people do things differently in different areas, and you're like, oh, this is how they fish for redfish in Charleston. Like, I could bring some of these ideas home with me. And same thing, with permit fishing in Mexico. Like, there's just so much like that you learn from different guides.
Right.
I have guides that are yelling at me and not yelling at me, but speaking to me in Spanish. And it's like, oh, like that's it. Like, I really like how he did that. Or like just different things. Yeah. Like the more you fish with other people, the more you learn. I mean, we're all learning. I don't care who you are. You could be guiding for 20 years. There's definitely something you can still learn. So I do like that aspect of tournament fishing.
Yeah, there's this thing out there of well, he or she they've been guiding for 10 years or 20 years. And I don't know I'm not so sure that that makes as big a difference as what folks think it does. It's because you may, let's just say Johnny's been in this for 20 years. But if Johnny's kind of halfway done things for 20 years, you may have a better opportunity to learn something and get better results with somebody that's been in it 5 years that's really dug into what they're doing and really
Yeah.
focused on what's going on. So yeah, I don't know that the year thing is as big a deal as what everybody thinks it is. I mean, I guess it is in some cases, but a lot of cases, yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily true. And so you said you went to Mexico and you just got back from there, right? That hasn't been
I
too long ago.
literally just got home. So
Yeah.
that's a really cool tournament along with the Marsh Ware does a ladies red. And what I like about both of those tournaments is they're just bringing women together. For the longest time, I felt like I was always sharing what I learned about fly fishing with other women. And I was like, okay, well, I'm never going to improve unless I'm learning from someone else. And so I made the decision to invest in signing up for this tournament. And, it's really cool because if somebody's investing in something like that, they're taking it seriously. Like they're wanting to learn. And, I just love these women's tournaments that bring all these ladies together, all experience levels, and I think it's great that it's not just a man's sport anymore. You got a little bit of diversity in there. And events like that are helping the sport be more diverse, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But Mexico was a lot of fun.
So where was it down there, and where did you stay and do all that, or do you just go down and stay wherever you can, or is it all
No,
in
so
one
this
shop?
is probably like you get treated like royalty. So this is not like my normal DIY fishing trip, right?
Oh,
Like
okay.
this is you're staying at a lodge and you're fishing with a guide, and so you're teamed up with a partner throughout the week in the tournament and you're fishing the whole time, and you get back in and they hand you a margarita as soon as you get off the boat. So like this is like,
Oh,
oh yeah, no,
oh,
we're getting treated very nicely on that particular tournament. Now they're not all like that,
oh,
to be
okay.
clear. And but it's just a great group of women that really grind for 6 days of fishing. And we are fortunate enough to fish with some amazing guides down there at the Palometa Club in Punta Allen. And it's just a good time. Yeah, we try to catch the biggest fish and the most fish. And unfortunately, this time the weather was a little rough. We had tropical storms the first 2 days, so we didn't have as much time on the water as normal. But it's just a good event that supports women fly fishing. So, and we have a damn good time while we're there.
Ooh, I bet it sounds. Well, I mean, it's not terrible if you had to. Okay, it's time to go back. Okay, they're going to hand me a margarita. Sounds terrible. That sounds wonderful.
Yep.
Actually, yeah, I could. I, I might start fishing women's tournaments somehow. That sounds like a good idea.
It's pretty cool though. So like Jennifer Matsu, the lady that started and runs that tournament, that's the first of its kind. It's the first all women's permit tournament. I mean, you hear about them in the Keys and you hear about them in Mexico, but I mean, this is all women. There's no men in it. So it's definitely unique. And I think she definitely started something that I hope lasts a really long time and continues to grow.
Yeah, heck yeah. So I would be remiss, and I'm going to kind of switch gears here just a second. So your fly of the month. What
Mm-hmm.
a great idea! So when I went down, Danielle was telling me I got this fly of the month thing, and it's like I don't know, 9, $10 a month, and I send you this different flies every time and every month, and you tie some of them, and you give us the pattern, and you give us a little story. And the podcast has been previewed in there, and I appreciate that a bunch, but it really has it's really made me start thinking differently, believe it or not. And so the first time out I took two of the flies, the striper fly and the simple tarpon fly, and the striper fly promptly lost like after 10 casts. I had to break it off because we were humming down the river. It was big water. And then I sat down for a while, and then I tied on that simple tarpon fly and caught a nice fish on that. But it really all the way around has made me start looking at things differently. And I've fished a tarpon toad on for browns for a while. And then the other day I was looking and I found this sculpin toad, which sculpins, up here are a big deal for big browns. They must taste good because they love to eat them. And I found this really nice tarpon. It's a sculpin toad or toad sculpin, something like that. That's whatever it's called. So I've tied some of those up, but all of that has really made me kind of branch out from getting your fly of the month. So I just think that's a neat idea. I know it keeps you're trying to keep in touch with your customers and that sort of thing, but I kind of use it differently. I use it as, all right, well, let's just see, what's this crab going to do?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we go back, and I think you're being very humble. Can we talk about the good fish that you caught on the tarpon fly?
I so I caught a big brown on it, on the fly that Danielle tied, and it was I call it a fish of a lifetime. I know there's people that have caught bigger ones, and hey, more power to them. It was a great day on the water. We caught one fish that day, and that was it. But that fly, and I had it out yesterday with a couple of guys that didn't fish streamers, and we caught another decent, okay brown on it. But it was the only brown we caught all day was on that fly. And I went through colors, I went through sizes, I went through profiles, and I landed on that. And I said, well, I've caught a big brown on this before, so let's try it. And we caught the biggest, which it wasn't big, it wasn't a huge brown this time, but it was a really nice fish on it, right over a gravel bar. So yeah, I mean,
That's really cool.
it really makes me start thinking outside the box even more. You need kind of get into ruts, or I do. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this works,
Yeah.
so I'm just going to use that and grind it out if I have to. But it has really made me look at things differently. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you sent a picture of your fish, and I just could not. I was like, "Wait, you took the tarpon fly and put it in the river?" Like I couldn't, like, I would have never thought to do that first off, and then to catch like such an amazing fish was just super cool to hear that fishing report. So
yeah, it was well, and I've caught a flounder on a zoo cougar before, which is a freshwater gallop fly.
yeah, you're speaking another language to
Yeah,
me right
right,
now.
right, right. Yeah, but most of
That's
the
cool.
trout guys know about Kelly Gallop and all that, and some of his flies. The zoo cougar, I don't know what in the world possessed me to put it on, but I was fishing over a sandbar down there off of Cape Sandblast actually, and caught
Oh, cool.
it wasn't a big flounder or anything, but I was like, that was really cool. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
no, the fly project's been good. It gives me something to do on bad weather days where I can't take a trip out, and I just sit down and tie some flies. And this month I'm really excited. I can't wait for you to get this one for November. I think when I initially started it, I was like, oh, it's going to go out the 1st of November. Luckily, everybody that signed up has been very patient with me. And when they get it, like 2 weeks into November, like nobody has complained,
no,
but it just kind of works out to like whenever I have time, I tie and write the newsletter, and seems to be a hit. So
oh, it
keep doing
definitely
it for
is.
as long as people want it.
Yeah, yeah. If you haven't, and this is I'll give you a plug. If you hadn't signed up for that, go to Danielle's website and just click on that and go ahead and sign up for it. It's really cool to get something in the mail like that every month too. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
we don't want too many people to sign up though, because I don't want to have to tie too many flies.
oh, how I understand that. I'm the worst at tying. I ordered like 10 dozen flies the other day, so I didn't have to tie any for 6 months. I'm just like, I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know me, I wait
Yep.
till the very absolute last. If I could time while I'm driving to the river, that's probably what I would end up doing. So it's just better. So let's kind of stay with your fishing, but let's switch over to just a minute. So obviously, fishing's brought us together, which is pretty cool. I mean, and it's a common bond between people. It's something that everybody that fishes, we have something in common, something to talk about. Fish pictures on phones, stuff like that. We all have whether it's fishing freshwater or salt, all of us can learn something. Like you just said, speaking a foreign language to you whenever I mention a zoo cougar, but something that we can all talk about. But sharing pictures of fish on your phone's really cool. Putting them on the internet's really cool. But and everybody, just about everybody's got a picture of their big fish. At least one picture of their big fish, if not more. But it's the one that got away. That's the one that we want to hear about. We can go on your website and see the one that you caught. We want to hear. Tell us the story about the one that got away.
Yeah. So, okay. I know the fish you speak of. This took place back in like 2016, so it's been a while, and it was down in the Keys. So we were fishing Long Key Bridge in the Keys. Little disclosure, this is not a fly fishing story, so I hope that's okay. It's
Yeah,
just
it'll be okay.
a general fishing story. It's the best one I had though. It's like no story like competes with this one. But so have you ever gone down to the Keys and
I
done
have
the like tarpon fishing?
I
Okay.
haven't yet.
So like growing up, we would drive down from Pensacola with the boat in tow, and we would do the tarpon migration, like fishing the bridge pilings for the tarpon. And all you do, I mean, it's pretty simple, and I think it's kind of looked down upon among fly fishermen nowadays, but it was my childhood. It's what got me here. But we would anchor up by the bridge and throw out a live mullet, and you just kind of sit and wait for the big fish to come up and eat the mullet, and then it's like game on. And so grew up doing that. I think my husband and I had probably been married for about a year now. And so we were like, we're going to go down there and do this on our own. And so it was just like a solo trip down to the Keys. We had borrowed my dad's Renegade. Have you ever seen one of those?
Oh,
It's a 18-foot like heavy skiff that has like a reverse shear. And so like what that means is like the bow kind of like swoops down, which is not like ideal
oh,
for the Keys.
right.
And fishing right next to the Atlantic. But so we're in just painting you a picture right now. So we're in that, and we're down there with that boat, and you have to buy your live mullet. So you have to find like the mullet man to buy your live mullet from, and he delivers them to your place you're staying. It's like a drug dealer. It's really weird. But so we spent like $40. We got our dozen of mullet delivered to the house. We hop in the boat, we head out to the bridge. And like if you've been down to the Keys in the spring, this is like the windiest time of the year to be in the Keys. Like it's just there's never good weather. It's very rare, at least. So like we should not be out there in the Renegade in these conditions, but like we're doing it, right? Like this, you paid for a week down here to fish. Like
Oh
this
yeah.
is our opportunity.
Yeah.
So we have our mullet. We're sitting at the bridge. You chuck out the mullet and you just wait, put it in Rodney, and we're down to like our last mullet. So this is very much like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Like you can have like too small, too big, and you want like the just right size of mullet. Well, this mullet was huge. It was way too big, and it was also dead. But we had nothing else to do, so we threw it out, and we're like, my husband was like, I'm gonna like just like slow reel it in to make it look like it's alive, because that's just what we were working with. And he's reeling it in. He's practically got it to the boat in this big swoop. Something, I
Oh,
mean, we're at sunset, right? So the sun's going down, and you just see something come up and grab this dead mullet. And usually, if you have a big dead mullet, you're going to get yourself a shark, or if you're lucky, like a grouper. So, based off of, it didn't eat on the surface, it was like slightly below the surface, but we're like, that definitely wasn't a grouper. So, we just assumed it was a shark. And Noble's just like, he's like, it's a shark. Let's go in. It's getting dark. And so he puts the rod in the rod holder, and we just start getting ready to go in. Like lines peeling. We're just like, we're gonna pull anchor. We're gonna like get ready to go. So about 5 minutes later, I mean, like we pulled the anchor up and we cleared all the other lines. And now I'm behind the steering wheel. And I look over at him, and he's like cupping the reel, like he's about to break it off. I'm like, you just got new braids and line on there. Like, let's at least reel some in. You just never know. And like, as I'm saying that, he's like putting pressure on the reel. And we look behind the boat and you just see this head come out
Oh,
of the water behind the boat. Like, this fish didn't even jump. I mean, you just see the head. And so we lose our minds. We're like, oh my God, that is a huge tarpon. To this day, the biggest tarpon I've ever seen in real life. And we're just like, oh shit, like this is happening. This is what were we doing? Why was the rod in the rod holder for 5 minutes? Like, um, and we like jump into action, Noble's standing. He ended up coming to the bow of the boat. I like swung the boat around, chasing after the fish. She was very smart. She knew what she was doing. She
oh,
stayed
cat.
very, yeah, that's Fisher. Um, but she stayed really close to the bridge the whole time. So she's zigging and zagging. Like down in the Keys, you have like the old arch bridge, and
Yeah.
then you have the newer modern bridge that they're driving on now. And so, I mean, they're like maybe 30 feet apart, if that. But this fish knew that that's where to stay to be safe. And so she was zigging and zagging. I mean, we're well into darkness now. I'm like holding a spotlight on the line trying to see which arch to go like maneuver the boat through. I mean, we did that for like probably like 45 minutes. It was just a long, and the waves are getting bigger. There was a really strong outgoing tide and current, and the fish made a maneuver that we could not do. So like she went through one of the arches and then like cut in between the bridges or something crazy, and it just wasn't safe. Again, we're borrowing my dad's boat, so I'm like, we cannot crash his boat. And the line broke off on the bridge piling. So that is our fish that got away that I will never forget. And it was so funny because like in the mess, like during all the chaos, I had got my camera out. I was like, I gotta get a picture of this fish. Like I sat it right next to me, and like once it broke off, I looked back and like the camera was in the engine well, like soaking wet.
Oh
And
no.
it was just complete chaos. But we get back to where we were staying, and the owners live upstairs of like the cottage or whatever. And he's a very salty Florida Keys guy, like super great fishy guy. He'd been giving us advice all week on where to fish and where to get live bait and all that stuff. And so we were like, oh, we gotta go tell Bill the story, right? And we're like, there's no way he's gonna believe us. Like you hear like people say 200-pound tarpon all the time, and they're like, yeah, right, whatever.
Yeah.
And so we tell him the story, and like we're just waiting for the like, oh, whatever, and he smiles and he's just like, I believe you. He goes, the big ones don't jump. And that fish never showed herself again, other than that initial little head shake where it was just like, it wasn't even the full body, it was just the head shake. And it was, I don't know, it was a special
Oh,
day.
oh, yeah. I'd like to have seen that one. It sounds, you're right. They don't, the bigger ones don't, the little ones jump all over the place, and probably the medium sized ones too.
Yeah.
And, but the big ones, I don't know that they're not going to expend that much energy or something. The cat is in front of
And
it, which is fine. We've got just about everybody that fishes either has dogs or cats or something, or chickens. A lot of folks have chickens too. I'm starting to find out, and and that's cool too. But so speaking of tarpon, y'all have some tarpon around Appalachia. You have some residents and you have some migrations as well. I think I'm right on that. But so there's more to the story than just the triple tail, and just
oh yeah.
like up here, I like to catch bluegills and I like to catch trout. I like to catch smallmouth and gar and muskie and carp, and pretty much I guess anything that swims, I'm for it. But what are some of the other fish down around Appalachia that you like to pursue, and kind of give us all the all the tricks and tips and insights that you can too, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely, tarpon's like the fish everybody wants to catch, right? And it's also something that I try to come into guiding very carefully. I'm one of those people, I want to be confident in what I'm doing. I want to know that, like, okay, if you're going to invest your money to go tarpon fishing with me, I'm going to give you the best shot. Like, I know what I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. And so this year I decided to not do tarpon trips and take this time, days off that I wasn't running trips, go out, do some scouting, do some, you know, fishing for them on my own without a client on board. And it was great. It was really fun. I had one client determined. He was like, I'll learn with you. I don't care. And so he was the one guy I had come down multiple times this year. And we did some tarpon fishing. And so I'm excited. I'm going to run tarpon trips in 2025 because there was
Awesome.
such a demand. Yeah, there's a big
Yeah.
demand for it. And I feel confident that I have some spots where I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. Like I'm, not taking somebody's spot or anything like that. So, definitely tarpon is a big fish in the area that everybody wants to catch. But, the one I'm kind of like hooked on right now are sheephead. So we have
Mm.
all these oyster bars and they're covered in these sheep's head that are, I mean, it was really hot in the spring. So they're doing like somersaults on the oyster bars. And it's just something that I am very excited for spring to come back around and get an opportunity on these fish a little more. Um, we have black drum on the oyster bars. We have redfish on the oyster bars. So there's a lot of fun fish. In the spring we get the pompano run. Pompano are coming through, which are a whole lot of fun. So I'm like you. I like to catch anything and everything. And that's kind of how I guide. Whatever's in season and whatever is the best chance of you catching a fish is kind of what I'm gonna push you towards, unless you're very adamant about, I'm coming down for a redfish, then we'll do that. But I might tell you, hey, right now is a great time to catch pompano. Would you be interested in that as well? So
My answer to that would be yes.
yeah,
Uh,
yes to all the above.
yes to all the above is right. Um, so with your tarpon trips, are you finding that you? I know that I'll go ahead and say it. Tarpon guiding is a lot easier than pushing that skiff around all day looking for a redfish. But are you finding your niche and finding the things that you like about it?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I just came from working in the Keys for a year before this, and the Keys has its traditions, which I respect a lot, and some of those traditions don't migrate up this way. And so I was really interested to see people, tarpon fishing with trolling motors. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh, you're tarpon fishing all day. Like that's going to be a lot of work. You're pulling, you're holding the boat up. But I'm starting to realize like an all day redfish trip is a lot of work compared to staying in one spot and waiting for the fish to come to you. So yeah, I think I learned a lot this year regarding that. And it's funny to see people tarpon fishing with a trolling motor just because like that's just so different, but it works. They're catching them. So I'm not gonna,
Yeah, don't knock it. Yeah, because
yeah,
you'll
no,
be
if
out
it
there with
works,
it.
yep,
We watched a guide and an angler. I think 3 days while we were there. They were right out in front of the house there at Indian Pass, going back and forth and back and forth, and that's all that guide was doing. He had the remote, and he was just standing there. They were
yep.
cruising, looking. I never saw him.
I
I don't think I ever saw him take a shot at a fish, but I didn't watch him the whole time.
Yeah, it's definitely hit or miss, and I think that'll be the biggest struggle for me. Tarpon fishing is just like the staying in one spot, the patience of like, okay, they're coming, you just gotta wait for them to come kind of thing. So, but we saw some great numbers of fish this year, had some great shots, had some good eats, like, so I mean, they're here, and I'm looking forward to this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think you're going to like it. I think who knows? I may show up down there. I'm still looking for my first one. Is why I say that because I've been down there several times now and had one eat, but it didn't last long enough to even really count it. And
Yeah.
I had a
Yeah.
few shots here and there, but nothing to where I was like, yeah, this is the one that's going to get out. I just haven't had that yet. So I know it's coming. I just need to
Yeah.
come down and spend some time. So, well, what do you say we close this thing out?
Yeah, that sounds great. I've enjoyed the conversation for sure.
Yeah. Well, hit the like and click the follow buttons, and subscribe on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Subscribe there as well, so you'll be the first to know when the episode drops. So, who is our guest on this Tripletail, another salty fish fly episode on the fly episode? She's passionate about getting people on fish. Her clients and her clients enjoy more than just fishing. Our lunch that day was outstanding. It was in a really cool place, and I won't ruin it for anybody else. And we don't want people flocking to your lunch spot. But one of the coolest places I've eaten lunch in a long time. That it was really neat. So you can find her at ladyguideflyfishing.com. She's the owner and head guide there. Danielle Davidson, thank you for stopping by the podcast and talking with us.
Thank you.
You just listened to Danielle Davidson, Tripletail and other salty fish on the fly on Southeastern Fly. And we'll see you next time.